Welcome back, guys, to Battleground Stories. 80% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. On March 19th, 2003, the convoy went missing, the mission that shouldn't have been undertaken, 6 vehicles and 22 Marines. I know. I was there when it happened. My name is Marcus Hale. I serve as a captain in the United States Marine Corps, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. I was 35 years old in Iraq, old enough to know everything, young enough to think I had seen everything. The desert was supposed to be easy and straightforward. Defined objectives, defined enemies, reliable intelligence. Operation Red River proved me wrong about what I thought I knew. We weren't supposed to be out there. The official convoy route ran northwest from Nasiriyah toward Baghdad, following Highway 1 with air support and regular check-ins every 2 hours. Our convoy went east, deep east, into a stretch of desert that barely showed up on the maps, chasing coordinates that came down from intelligence officers who wouldn't give us their names. The briefing lasted 5 minutes. A major I'd never seen before walked into the tent at Camp Viper, dropped a grid reference on the table, and told us we had 72 hours to reach a small town called Al-Kharj, verify a weapons cache, and extract any intel we could find. No air support, no backup, radio silence except for emergency comms. When I asked why, he just said the area was politically sensitive and that we'd understand when we got there. I should have refused the mission right then. Our convoy was light and fast. 2 Humvees up front, mine and Sergeant Alex Ruiz's. 2 7-tons in the middle carrying supplies and comm gear. 2 more Humvees in the rear, one with a mounted M240 and another with our medic, Corporal Nadia Hussein. We had enough fuel for 4 days, enough ammo for a firefight, and enough water to last a week if we rationed. Ruiz was my tech lead. 28 years old, sharp as a blade, could fix a radio with duct tape and wire. He had that nervous energy that made him good at his job, but hard to sleep next to. He checked our GPS 3 times before we rolled out, and each time he frowned, like the numbers didn't add up. Private Liam Carter rode in my Humvee. 22, fresh-faced, too eager. This was his 2nd deployment, and he still thought war was something you could win with enough courage. He kept his rifle clean, his gear squared away, and his mouth shut unless spoken to. Good kid. I liked him. Nadia Hussein was the exception to every rule. 30 years old, spoke 4 languages, grew up in Detroit but spent summers in Jordan with family. She knew the region better than our maps did, and she wasn't afraid to tell officers when they were wrong. I respected that. She was also the only one who seemed uneasy about the mission from the start. We left Camp Viper at 0400, headlights off, NVGs down. The desert looked like the surface of the moon, flat and gray and dead. We drove east for 6 hours without seeing another vehicle, another person, another sign of life. Just sand, rock, and the occasional skeletal remains of a building that might have been a home once. Around 1100, the landscape started changing. The flat desert gave way to low ridges and dry wadis that cut through the terrain like veins. The air shimmered with heat, turning the horizon into liquid. Carter kept asking if we were close. I told him to drink water and shut up. By 1400, we were off the map, literally. The GPS showed our position as a blinking dot in the middle of blank space. No roads, no towns, no landmarks. Ruiz pulled up next to me at a rally point and said his equipment was acting strange. The satellite uplink kept dropping, the radio frequencies were filled with static, and the compass needle wouldn't settle on north. "Could be solar interference," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. Nadia climbed out of her Humvee and walked to the ridgeline. She stood there for a long time, scanning the horizon with binoculars. When she came back, her face was tight. "Something's wrong with this place," she said. "Define wrong," I told her. "No birds, no insects, no tracks. It's the middle of the day, and I haven't seen a single living thing since we crossed that wadi 2 hours ago." I looked around. She was right. The desert wasn't just empty. It was sterile. Even the wind felt wrong, like it was blowing in circles instead of following the natural flow of the land. We pressed on. At 16:30, we found the town. It appeared without warning, rising out of the desert like a mirage that refused to fade. One moment, we were staring at empty sand. The next, we were looking at buildings, dozens of them. Low, square structures made of clay and stone, arranged in a rough grid around a central square. No walls, no gates, no defenses. Just a town sitting in the middle of nowhere. I called a halt. The convoy stopped in a loose formation about 300 meters out. I glassed the town through binoculars. No movement, no smoke, no vehicles, no people. Ruiz pulled up his satellite imagery on the laptop. The screen showed nothing but desert. No buildings, no roads, no town. According to every map we had, we were staring at empty sand. "That's not possible," Ruiz muttered. But it was there, solid, real. I could see the texture of the clay walls, the shadows cast by the afternoon sun, the faded paint on doors that hung crooked on rusted hinges. Nadia stood next to me, arms crossed. "This isn't Al-Kharj." "How do you know?" "Because Al-Kharj is a city. This is..." She trailed off, searching for the word. "This is something else." I radioed higher. Nothing but static. I tried again. Same result. Emergency frequency, dead. Satellite phone, no signal. We were cut off. I made the call. We'd investigate the town, spend the night if necessary, and figure out our next move in the morning. If this wasn't our target, we'd backtrack and find the real Al-Kharj. Simple. Nothing about that town was simple. We rolled in slow, weapons ready, eyes scanning every window and doorway. The streets were narrow, barely wide enough for the Humvees. The buildings leaned in close, casting long shadows that never seemed to move even as the sun shifted. The air changed as soon as we crossed into the town. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds. My breath didn't fog, but I could feel the cold settling into my bones. Carter noticed it too. He zipped his jacket up, even though we'd been sweating in the heat minutes before. Ruiz parked his Humvee in the central square and climbed out, rifle slung, eyes wide. "Sir, this doesn't make any sense." I stepped out into the square. The ground was packed dirt, hard as concrete. Around us, buildings stood silent and empty. Doors hung open. Windows gaped like hollow eyes. I walked to the nearest building and looked inside. Empty. No furniture, no trash, no sign anyone had ever lived there. Carter called out from across the square. He was standing in front of what looked like a market stall. Wooden shelves lined the walls, still stocked with goods. Canned food, faded labels in Arabic. Bottled water covered in dust. A rack of newspapers, yellowed and brittle. I picked up one of the papers. The date was 1991, 12 years old. Nadia appeared at my shoulder. "Desert Storm," she said quietly. "This town was abandoned during the Gulf War." "Then why isn't it on the maps?" She didn't answer. We set up a perimeter in the square. 2 Humvees facing north, 2 facing south, sentries on rotation. Ruiz tried the radios again. Still nothing. GPS still glitching. Satellite phone still dead. We were alone. Night came fast. One moment the sun was setting. The next it was gone, plunging the town into darkness so thick our headlights barely cut through it. We ran the generators quiet, kept voices low, and posted double guard. I took first watch with Carter. We sat in the Humvee, scanning the empty streets through NVGs. The town looked different at night. The buildings seemed closer, the shadows deeper. Every few minutes, I thought I saw movement at the edge of my vision, but when I turned, there was nothing. At 2,200, Carter tapped my arm. "Sir, do you hear that?" I listened. Faint, distant. A sound like wind moving through narrow spaces, but the air was dead still. "It's just the buildings," I told him. "Old places make noise. but I didn't believe it. And neither did he. At 2300, Ruiz reported hearing footsteps near his position. I checked. Nothing there. At midnight, Nadia claimed she saw a light moving in one of the buildings on the south side. We investigated. Empty. At 0100, Private First Class Danny Torres went missing. He'd been on sentry duty at the north edge of the square, paired with Lance Corporal Mike Shaw. Shaw said Torres stepped away to check a noise near one of the buildings. He was gone maybe 30 seconds. When Shaw called him back, there was no answer. We searched. All of us. Flashlights sweeping through empty rooms. Boots crunching on broken glass. Voices echoing off clay walls. We found his rifle leaning against a doorway. His helmet sitting on the ground nearby. His boot prints led into a building and stopped in the middle of an empty room. No back door, no windows, no Torres. I called everyone back to the square. We formed up, rifles out, backs to the Humvees. The town pressed in around us, dark and silent and watching. Ruiz was shaking, not from fear, from cold. The temperature had dropped again. I could see my breath now, white mist in the glow of the headlights. Nadia stood next to me, jaw tight. We need to leave, now. I agreed. We mounted up, engines roaring to life. I took point, Ruiz behind me. We rolled toward the north exit, headlights cutting through the dark. The streets had changed. They twisted differently now. Corners that had been sharp were rounded. Buildings that had been on the left were now on the right. We drove for 10 minutes, following the same route we'd taken in, but the exit wasn't there. Ruiz's voice crackled over the radio. "Sir, I think we're going in circles." I stopped the convoy, pulled out the map, checked the GPS. The screen showed us moving, but the position kept resetting, jumping back to the center of the town, no matter which direction we drove. We were trapped. That's when the whispering started. Low, layered, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Not words, just sound, rising and falling like a tide. Carter pressed his hands to his ears. Make it stop. But it didn't stop. It grew louder. And somewhere in the dark, something moved. The whispering didn't come from one direction. It came from everywhere. From the buildings, from the ground, from the air itself. 1,000 voices layered on top of each other, speaking in rhythms that almost made sense, but never formed words you could hold on to. Carter was the first to break. He yanked his helmet off and threw it on the ground, pressing his palms against his ears. "It's inside my head." I grabbed him by the vest and pulled him close. "Get it together, Marine." Eyes front, weapon ready. He nodded, jaw clenched, and picked up his helmet. But I could see it in his eyes. The fear wasn't just surface level anymore. It was rooting deep. Ruiz's voice came through on the radio, tight and controlled. "Sir, we need to move. Now. Any direction. Just get us out of this square." He was right. Sitting still made us targets. I ordered the convoy to form up, single file, and we rolled south toward what looked like a main thoroughfare. The headlights carved tunnels through the dark, but the darkness pushed back, thick and resistant like we were driving through oil. The buildings slid past on either side, swint witnesses with empty windows. Every 100 meters, I glanced at the GPS. The screen flickered. Our position jumped. 1 second we were heading south, the next the arrow pointed east, then north. The town was rewriting itself around us. Nadia's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, this isn't navigation failure. The streets are changing." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to say it was equipment malfunction, electromagnetic interference, anything rational. But I'd been watching the landmarks. A building with a collapsed roof had been on our left 5 minutes ago. Now it was on our right. A street we'd never driven down looked familiar, like we'd passed it twice already. We weren't lost in the town. The town was keeping us. At 0230, we reached what should have been the eastern edge. Instead of open desert, we found ourselves back in the central square. Same market stalls, same dried fountain, same spot where Torres had disappeared. I stopped the convoy and climbed out. The rest of the squad dismounted, forming a loose perimeter. Nobody said it, but we all felt it. We weren't leaving. Ruiz kicked a rock across the square. It skittered across the dirt and stopped dead in the center, like it had hit an invisible wall. He stared at it, then at me. "This isn't real," he said. His voice was flat, empty. "Towns don't move, streets don't rearrange. I don't know what this is, but it isn't real." "It's real enough," Nadia said quietly. She was standing near one of the buildings, hand pressed against the clay wall. "These walls are solid. The ground is solid. We're breathing real air. Whatever this place is, it exists." Lance Corporal Shaw approached me, rifle slung low. He was 32, calm under fire, the kind of Marine you wanted next to you in a firefight. But his hands were shaking. "Sir, with respect, we need to consider the possibility that we're not getting out of here the conventional way." "What are you suggesting?" He glanced at the buildings around us. Torres disappeared inside one of these structures. No doors, no windows in that room, but he's gone. Maybe the way out isn't through the streets. Maybe it's through the buildings. It was insane. It was also the only idea we had. I split the squad into 3 teams. Ruiz would take 4 Marines and search the northern buildings. Shaw would take 4 and check the east side. I'd take Carter, Nadia, and 2 others, PFC Daniels and Lance Corporal Rodriguez, and clear the western block. "Stay on comms," I told them. "Every 2 minutes, check in. If you find anything at all, you report it immediately. If someone goes missing, you pull back to the square. Understood?" They nodded. We moved out. My team entered the first building on the west side. The door hung loose on one hinge, groaning as we pushed it open. Inside, the air was colder, thick with dust that hung suspended like it had been waiting for us. Our flashlights cut through the dark, revealing a single room, empty. 4 walls, packed dirt floor, no furniture, no windows. Nothing. We moved to the next building. Same layout. Empty. The third building had stairs leading down. Carter saw them first. "Sir, basement entrance." I approached cautiously, rifle up, flashlight mounted. The stairs descended into absolute darkness, the kind of black that swallowed light. I clicked my radio. "Hail to all teams. We found a stairway. Descending to investigate." Ruiz's voice came back, distorted by static. "Copy. We've got stairs to north side." Shaw's voice followed. "Same here. East side. Sir, is this—" The radio cut out. I tried again. Nothing but white noise. Nadia moved up beside me. "We shouldn't split up more than we already have." She was right. But we didn't have a choice. I signaled Carter and Daniels to take point. We descended. The stairway was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. The walls pressed in close, damp despite the desert above. The air smelled wrong. Not decay, not rot. Something older. Like stone that had been buried for centuries. 20 steps down, the stairs ended in a corridor. The walls here weren't clay. They were carved stone, smooth and featureless, stretching into darkness in both directions. I swept my light left, then right. No doors, no markings, just endless stone. Carter's voice was barely a whisper. "Where are we?" I didn't answer because I didn't know. We moved left, single file, weapons ready. Every step echoed, the sound bouncing off stone and returning distorted. After 50 meters, we found the first body. It was a soldier. American uniform, M16 rifle, boots caked with sand. He sat with his back against the wall, head tilted forward like he'd fallen asleep. His skin was gray, desiccated, lips pulled back in a grimace. Nadia knelt beside him and carefully lifted the dog tags from his neck. She read them under her flashlight, then looked up at me with eyes that had gone very wide. "Captain Marcus Daniels, 1st Infantry Division, KYA 1991. The date hit me like a punch. 32 years. This man had been dead for 32 years, sitting in a tunnel that shouldn't exist under a town that wasn't on any map. Rodriguez crossed himself and backed away. We need to leave. Now. But Carter was staring down the corridor, flashlight beams shaking. Sir, there are more. He was right. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out shapes along the walls. Dozens of them. Soldiers sitting in rows, backs against stone, weapons across their laps. All dead. All wearing uniforms from different eras. I saw Vietnam-era fatigues, Korean War gear, even what looked like World War II patches. How long has this place been here? Daniels whispered. The answer came not from us, but from ahead. A voice, clear, speaking English. Long enough. We spun, rifles up. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor, silhouetted against a light source I couldn't identify. Man-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. Too tall, limbs too long. It stepped forward. The light behind it flickered, and I saw its face. Or what used to be a face. The features were there. Eyes, nose, mouth. But they moved independently, sliding across the surface like reflections on water. Carter fired. 3 rounds, center mass. The figure didn't react. The bullets passed through it like smoke and sparked off the stone wall behind. It kept walking toward us. Fall back, I shouted. We ran, boots pounding stone, flashlights bouncing wildly. Behind us, the corridor filled with sound. Not footsteps. Whispers. Hundreds of them, overlapping, building into a roar. We hit the stairs and climbed. Carter stumbled, and I grabbed his vest, hauling him up. Daniels was screaming into his radio, calling for backup that wouldn't come. Rodriguez prayed in Spanish, words tumbling out faster than breath. We burst out of the building and into the square. The rest of the squad was already there, running from their own entrances, faces pale, eyes wild. Ruiz grabbed my arm. Sir, we found them. In the tunnels. We found all of them. Found who? Everyone, every convoy, every patrol, every soldier who disappeared in this desert for the last 70 years. They're down there. All of them. Shaw was sitting on the ground, head in his hands. They're not dead. Not really, they're waiting. Sitting in rows, waiting for something. I wanted to call them crazy. I wanted to say they'd panicked, misidentified bodies, seen shadows. But I'd seen it too. I'd seen the dead soldier from 1991, perfectly preserved, sitting in a tunnel that defied physics. The whispering grew louder. It wasn't coming from the buildings anymore. It was coming from beneath us. From the tunnels we'd just escaped. The ground vibrated, a low tremor that made the dirt dance. And then the square began to sink, not collapse. Sink. The packed earth lowered slowly, smoothly, like an elevator descending. Buildings around us stayed in place, but the ground dropped, revealing more of their foundations. Stone foundations. Ancient stone covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Back to the vehicles! I shouted. We scrambled for the Humvees. Engines roared to life. I floored the accelerator, and we shot forward, tires spitting dirt. The streets opened ahead of us, not the twisted maze from before. These were new passages, wide and straight, leading down, always down. We weren't escaping the town. We were descending into it. Behind us, the square continued to sink, revealing a massive stone structure beneath the clay buildings. A temple, a tomb, something that predated the town by centuries, maybe millennia. Ruiz's voice came through the radio, cracking with static and fear. Sir, the GPS, it's finally working. What does it say? There was a long pause. It says we're 300 meters underground, but we could still see the sky above us. Stars glittered in the black. The moon hung cold and distant. We were underground and on the surface simultaneously, in a place where physics was a suggestion, not a law. The convoy rolled deeper into streets that shouldn't exist, chasing headlights that illuminated nothing but more darkness ahead. And somewhere below us, in tunnels carved from stone older than civilization, dead men sat in rows and waited for the living to join them. The descent wasn't gradual. One moment we were driving on level ground, the next the street tilted downward at a steep angle, pulling us deeper into the earth. I fought the wheel, trying to keep the Humvee steady as gravity dragged us forward. Behind me, the 7 tons groaned, brakes screaming, but momentum was stronger. The convoy slid down streets that spiraled like the inside of a shell, circling a central point we couldn't see but could feel pulling at us. The buildings changed as we descended. The clay walls gave way to carved stone, massive blocks fitted together without mortar, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. They weren't writing. They were something else. Patterns that moved when you weren't looking directly at them. Shapes that suggested meanings your mind couldn't hold. Carter was hyperventilating in the passenger seat. I told him to focus on his breathing, but my own heart was hammering against my ribs. Every instinct I had was screaming to turn around, to climb back up, to get out. But there was no turning around. The streets behind us had closed, buildings shifting to seal off our escape. The radio crackled to life. Ruiz's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "Sir, Rodriguez is gone." "Say again." "He was in the back of my Humvee. I looked in the mirror and he wasn't there. Doors still closed. Windows up. He's not here." I checked my mirror. Daniel sat in the back seat, pale and shaking. Still there. For now. "All vehicles, sound off," I ordered. "Driver and passengers, confirm everyone's accounted for." The responses came back one by one. We'd lost 3 more Marines, Rodriguez, Private Jenkins from Shaw's vehicle, and our medic, Nadia. My stomach dropped. Nadia had been in the rear Humvee, treating a sprained ankle. Now she was gone, vanished like she'd never existed. We were down to 15. The street leveled out, opening into a vast underground chamber. Our headlights barely touched the walls. The space was enormous, cathedral-like, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. In the center stood a structure. It was a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid made of the same ancient stone, rising from the chamber floor in perfect geometric tiers. At its peak, a platform, and on that platform, something glowed with a sickly green light. I stopped the convoy 50 meters from the base of the ziggurat. The engines idled, rough and loud in the vast silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Carter pointed at the walls. Oh God. Oh Jesus, God. The chamber walls weren't empty. They were lined with alcoves, hundreds of them, carved into the stone. And in each alcove sat a figure. Soldiers, some in full gear, some in torn uniforms, some in nothing but dog tags. All sitting perfectly still, eyes open, staring at nothing. I climbed out of the Humvee, rifle up. The air down here was different. Thick. Heavy with moisture, despite being in the middle of a desert. It pressed against my skin like invisible hands. Shaw dismounted and moved up beside me. His face had gone gray. "Sir, those soldiers, they're not dead." "What?" He gestured to the nearest alcove. Inside sat a man in Vietnam-era fatigues. His chest rose and fell, shallow breaths. His eyes tracked us as we moved, following with mechanical precision. But he didn't blink, didn't react, just breathed and watched. I approached the alcove. The soldier's name tape read Morrison. His uniform was faded but intact. No wounds, no signs of violence. He just sat there, hands resting on his knees, breathing. "Morrison," I said. No response. I said it louder. Nothing. I reached out to touch his shoulder. Shaw grabbed my arm. "Don't." He was right. Something told me that touching these men would be a mistake. They weren't alive, not really. They were something else, waiting, preserved. Ruiz joined us, laptop in hand. "Sir, I'm picking up electromagnetic activity off the charts. Whatever's on top of that pyramid, it's generating a field that shouldn't be possible with current technology. Or any technology. Define shouldn't be possible. The readings suggest it's bending space. That's why the GPS said we were underground, but we could still see the sky. This place exists in multiple locations simultaneously. It's..." He trailed off, searching for words. "It's a trap, a dimensional trap, and we drove right into it." The whispering started again, but this time, I understood fragments. Not words exactly. Impressions, thoughts that weren't mine sliding into my mind. Stay, join, wait, serve. I shook my head, trying to clear it. The others were experiencing it too. Carter had dropped to his knees, hands over his ears. Shaw was backing toward the Humvee, eyes unfocused. Daniels was staring at the ziggurat, walking toward it like a man in a dream. "Daniels, stop!" I lunged forward and grabbed him. He fought me, stronger than he should have been, eyes wild. "They're calling," he said, "but can't you hear them? They need us. They've been waiting so long." I slapped him, hard. His head snapped to the side, and for a moment, clarity returned to his eyes. Then the whispering surged, and he collapsed. Shaw helped me drag Daniels back to the Humvee. The whispering was constant now, a pressure behind my eyes, promising rest, promising an end to fear and pain and uncertainty. All I had to do was sit down, find an alcove, wait with the others. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. The pain helped. Focus on the pain, focus on the mission, focus on anything but the voices. Ruiz was typing frantically on his laptop. "Sir, I think I can disrupt the field. If I can generate a counter-frequency, we might be able to create an opening. But I need to get closer to the source. The pyramid. The pyramid." I looked at the ziggurat. It rose in perfect steps, each tier exactly the same height. The glow at the top pulsed, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Around its base, I now noticed, were more figures. Not sitting. These were standing, arranged in a circle, facing outward. They wore different uniforms, different eras, but they all stood at attention, rifles at their sides, eyes forward. Guards. "If we go up there," Shaw said quietly, "some of us won't come back down." He was right. But what choice did we have? Stay here and eventually succumb to the whispering? Join the rows of soldiers, sitting in alcoves, breathing but not living? Or try to fight our way out? I made the call. "Shaw, you're with me and Ruiz. We climb. The rest of you, stay with the vehicles. If we're not back in 30 minutes, you leave without us." PFC Martinez, a quiet kid from Texas, spoke up. "Sir, where would we go?" I didn't have an answer. We approached the ziggurat. The standing soldiers didn't react as we passed them. Up close, I could see they weren't breathing. These ones were truly dead, bodies preserved by whatever force emanated from the pyramid. But their eyes still moved, tracking us as we began to climb. The steps were steep and narrow. My boots slipped on stone worn smooth by centuries, or maybe millennia. Ruiz climbed ahead of me, laptop strapped to his back, muttering calculations under his breath. Shaw brought up the rear, rifle ready, checking our six. Halfway up, the whispers became voices, clear, distinct, speaking in English. "Turn back, Marcus Hale." I froze. That was my voice. My exact voice. "You can't leave. None of you can. This place was built to hold us, all of us. Every soldier who walks in desert sand, every warrior who spills blood on ancient ground. We feed it. Our violence sustains it. Our fear makes it strong." I looked down. At the base of the pyramid, standing among the guards, was I. Same uniform, same gear, same face. It looked up at me with eyes that glowed, faint green. "That's not real," Ruiz said, but his voice shook. Shaw was staring down at the base too. Two more figures had appeared. One looked like Shaw. The other looked like Ruiz. Perfect duplicates, standing at attention, waiting. "Keep moving," I ordered. We climbed. The whispers grew angry. The temperature dropped until our breath fogged. The stone under our hands burned with cold. But we kept climbing. At the top, we found the source. It wasn't a device. It wasn't technology. It was a well, a perfectly circular hole carved into the platform, maybe 3 meters across, dropping straight down into darkness. The green glow came from within, pulsing with that slow, steady rhythm. Ruiz approached the edge and looked down. I grabbed his vest, holding him back. "Don't get too close." He nodded, but pulled out a flare, cracked it, and dropped it into the well. We watched it fall. The green glow swallowed the red light. The flare fell for 10 seconds, 20, 30. It never hit bottom. "It's a door," Ruiz whispered. "Not to another place, to another dimension. This entire chamber, the pyramid, the town above us, it's all built around this well. It's been pulling people in for thousands of years, feeding on them, growing stronger." "Can you close it?" He set up his laptop on the platform, fingers flying across the keys. "I can try to generate a disruption field. It might collapse the dimensional overlap enough for us to get out, but what? It might also collapse the entire structure. The town, the chamber, all of it could come down." Shaw looked at me. "Do we have a choice?" We didn't. "Do it," I said. Ruiz worked for 5 minutes that felt like hours. Around us, the whispers became screams. The soldiers at the base of the pyramid started moving, climbing the steps toward us. Not fast, but inevitable. "They're coming," Shaw said, raising his rifle. "Don't shoot," I told him. "Save your ammo. We might need it." Ruiz hit a final key. "Now!" The laptop emitted a high-pitched whine. The green glow flickered. The whispers stuttered, broke apart, reformed. The climbing soldiers froze mid-step. Then the well began to collapse. Not inward, outward. The edges crumbled, stone falling up instead of down, dissolving into the air. The green light spasmed, flashing bright enough to hurt, then dimmed, then flared again. The entire pyramid shook. "Run!" I shouted. We scrambled down the steps. The standing soldiers crumbled to dust as we passed. The walls of the chamber cracked, chunks of stone raining down. Behind us, the well imploded with a sound like reality tearing, a deep bass note that vibrated in my bones. We hit the chamber floor and sprinted for the vehicles. The Marines were already mounting up, engines roaring. I dove into my Humvee as the ceiling began to collapse. "Drive! Drive!" We shot forward. The street that had brought us down now spiraled upward, opening like a throat, expelling something it couldn't swallow. Buildings crumbled on either side. The ancient stone foundations shattered, revealing desert sand beneath. The convoy climbed, fast, faster than we should have been able to move. Behind us, the chamber collapsed entirely, imploding into the well, taking the pyramid and the alcoves, and all those waiting soldiers with it. We burst out of the ground into daylight. Not the desert, not the town. We were on a highway, a real highway, with pavement and road signs and traffic moving past us. The Humvees skidded to a stop, Marines staring in confusion. I checked the GPS. It worked. We were 70 kilometers north of Nasiriyah, on Highway 1, exactly where we were supposed to be, as if we'd never left. But we had left, and we'd left people behind. I counted heads, 10 Marines, out of 22. Ruiz sat in his Humvee, staring at nothing. Shaw was pale, shaking. Carter was crying quietly in the passenger seat. And somewhere behind us, buried under sand and time, a well waited in the dark, closed, for now. The first vehicle that passed us on Highway 1 was a civilian truck. The driver stared at our convoy like we'd materialized out of thin air. Maybe we had. I sat in the Humvee, hands still gripping the wheel, knuckles white. Carter was slumped in the passenger seat, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Behind us, the other vehicles idled, exhaust coughing in the morning heat. Morning. It was morning. We'd entered that town at 16:30 the previous day. According to my watch, only 8 hours had passed, but it felt like weeks, months, a lifetime compressed into a single night. Ruiz's voice came through on the radio, weak and distant. "Sir, where do we go now?" "Good question. We were supposed to be on a 72-hour mission to Al-Kharj. We'd been gone less than a day, lost 12 Marines, and had no proof of what we'd seen. No photos, no physical evidence, just 10 traumatized soldiers and stories that would sound insane in the daylight. I made the call. We're going back to base. Camp Viper, standard convoy formation. No stops unless absolutely necessary. We drove north. The desert looked normal, empty, safe. But I kept checking the mirror, expecting to see clay buildings rising behind us, expecting the highway to twist and spiral downward. It never did. The road stayed straight, real. We reached Camp Viper at 1100. The gate guards waved us through without comment. To them, we were just another convoy returning from a routine patrol. They had no idea what we'd seen, what we'd lost. I parked in the motor pool and climbed out. My legs barely held me. I'd been driving for 4 hours on pure adrenaline, and now that we'd stopped, everything caught up at once. I bent over and vomited in the sand. Shaw appeared beside me, offering a canteen. "You good, sir?" I wasn't. None of us were, but I nodded anyway. "Get everyone to medical. Full checkups, then debriefs at 1400. He hesitated. "Sir, what do we tell them?" I straightened up, wiped my mouth. "The truth. We tell them exactly what happened. The medical exams took 3 hours. No injuries, no diseases, no physical signs of trauma. According to every test, we were perfectly healthy. The doctors couldn't explain the haunted looks in our eyes or why Carter wouldn't stop shaking. They chalked it up to stress and sent us back to our barracks with orders to rest. Rest. Like that was possible. At 1400, we gathered in a briefing room, 10 Marines sitting in metal chairs, staring at nothing. A major I didn't recognize sat across from us, notepad open, pen ready. "Captain Hale," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Your report says you lost 12 Marines during a reconnaissance mission. Walk me through what happened." I told him. Everything. The town that wasn't on the maps. The tunnels filled with dead soldiers from different wars. The ziggurat, the well, the dimensional overlap, the voices, all of it. He wrote without looking up. When I finished, he set his pen down and folded his hands. "Captain, you're telling me you encountered a structure that exists outside normal space, filled with soldiers who've been missing for decades, controlled by some kind of trans-dimensional entity." "Yes, sir." "And you destroyed this structure by generating a counter-frequency that collapsed the dimensional field." "Sergeant Ruiz did. Yes, sir." He looked at Ruiz. "Sergeant, do you have any documentation of this frequency? Any readings from your equipment?" Ruiz stared at his hands. "No, sir. The laptop was destroyed when the structure collapsed. I have nothing." The major nodded slowly. "So, you have no evidence, no bodies, no photos, no physical proof of any kind?" "No, sir." He closed the notepad. "Captain Hale, I'm going to be very clear with you. What you're describing violates every known law of physics. It's impossible. More importantly, it's unprovable. Do you understand what that means?" I understood. It meant they weren't going to believe us. It meant our missing Marines would be listed as combat losses or desertions. It meant Operation Red River would be buried under layers of classification and denial. But that wasn't what bothered me. What bothered me was the look in the major's eyes. He believed us. I could see it. He just didn't want to admit it. "There have been other incidents," I said quietly. "Other patrols that disappeared in that region. We found their bodies. Soldiers from Vietnam, Korea, World War II. How do you explain that?" The major stood. "I don't. And neither will you. This briefing is classified. You will not discuss Operation Red River with anyone. Not your families, not other soldiers, not each other. As far as the Corps is concerned, your convoy was ambushed near Nasiriyah. You fought your way out. 12 Marines were killed in action. That's the official story. And the truth? He looked at me for a long moment. The truth, Captain, is that some places in this world don't follow our rules. They existed before we got here, and they'll exist long after we're gone. We can't fight them. We can't contain them. The best we can do is avoid them and pray no one else stumbles into them by accident. He left. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Shaw spoke. So that's it? We just forget? We don't have a choice, I said. But forgetting wasn't possible. The nightmares started that night. I'd close my eyes and find myself back in the chamber, standing at the base of the ziggurat, looking up at the green glow. The alcoves would be full of soldiers, and this time, I'd recognize their faces. Torres, Rodriguez, Jenkins, Nadia, all sitting perfectly still, eyes open, breathing, but not living. In the dreams, I'd try to reach them, but the whispers would start, and I'd feel myself being pulled toward an empty alcove. I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, convinced I was still underground. Carter had it worse. He stopped sleeping altogether. Shaw found him one night wandering the base, bare feet bleeding, muttering about doors that needed to stay closed. They put him on psychiatric hold and eventually discharged him on medical grounds. Ruiz started drinking, heavy. By the end of the deployment, he could barely function. He'd stare at screens showing nothing but static, claiming he could still see the readings from that night, still hear the whispering in the electromagnetic noise. Shaw held it together better than most. He finished his deployment, went home to his family, and never talked about Iraq again. I heard from him once, years later. He said he'd driven through the desert in Arizona and saw a town that looked abandoned. He turned around and drove for 6 hours in the opposite direction. He didn't need to say why. As for me, I did 3 more deployments. None of them were the same. I'd look at maps differently now, searching for blank spaces, places that shouldn't exist but did. I'd question orders that sent Marines into isolated regions. I'd scan intelligence reports for patterns, missing patrols, unexplained disappearances, soldiers found sitting in impossible places with no memory of how they got there. The patterns were there. Once you knew what to look for, you could see them. Gaps in the official record, missions that got scrubbed from the books, coordinates that no one wanted to talk about. The military knew. Maybe they'd always known. Maybe every generation of soldiers stumbled into these places, and every generation learned the same lesson. Some doors should stay closed, some wells should stay buried, and some places should be left off the maps for a reason. I retired in 2008 with 20 years of service and a chest full of medals I never wear. I moved to a small town in Montana, as far from deserts as I could get. I married a woman who never asked about my deployments. I built a life that had nothing to do with war. But I still dream about the well. In my dreams, it's not collapsed. The ziggurat still stands, perfect and eternal, in a chamber carved from stone older than memory. The alcoves are still full, more full than before. Soldiers from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from conflicts I don't even recognize. All sitting, all waiting. And at the base of the pyramid, standing at attention, is me. Another version of me. Eyes glowing faint green, mouth moving with whispers I can't quite hear. Sometimes I wake up and check my hands, making sure I'm still real, still here, still alive in the world above. Most times, I'm not sure anymore. 3 weeks ago, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Captain Hale? The voice was young, nervous. Who's asking? Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. Sir, I'm calling because my grandfather was a soldier in Vietnam. He disappeared during a patrol in 1968. His name was Thomas Morrison. My blood went cold. "I can't help you, Lieutenant." "Sir, please. I found classified files. Operation Red River. Your name is on them. I know you saw something. I know you found soldiers who'd been missing for decades. Was my grandfather one of them?" I wanted to hang up. I wanted to tell her to stop digging, to let the dead rest. But I remembered the man in the alcove, sitting with his hands on his knees, dog tags reading Morrison. I remembered his chest, rising and falling with mechanical breaths. "Yes," I said quietly. "He was there. Is he still alive?" "How do you answer that question? Yes, he's alive, but he's not living. He's waiting in a place that shouldn't exist, preserved by forces we don't understand, sitting in an alcove carved by hands that built temples before humanity had language." "No," I lied. "He's gone. Let him rest." She was quiet for a moment. "Sir, there's another patrol missing. Same region, same coordinates. They went dark 2 days ago." My hands started shaking. "What coordinates?" She gave them to me. I didn't need to check a map. I knew those numbers. They were etched into my memory like scars. "Tell them to pull back," I said, "and tell them to burn the grid reference and never go there again." "Sir, I don't have that authority. I'm just a junior officer trying to find out what happened to my grandfather. Then find someone who does. Because if another convoy goes into that town, they won't come back. And if they go down into the chamber, if they find the well—" I couldn't finish. The line was silent. "Sir, is it still there?" I closed my eyes. I could see it. The chamber, the pyramid, the well, collapsed, buried. But not gone. Never gone. Places like that didn't die. They just waited. "Yes," I said. "It's still there." I hung up. That night, I stood in my backyard and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a desert on the other side of the world, a town sat invisible on the maps. Under that town, tunnels stretched through stone and time. Under those tunnels, a chamber held rows of soldiers who would never come home. And at the center of it all, a well waited in the dark, patient and eternal, for the next convoy to arrive. Ruiz had called it a dimensional trap. Shaw had called it a feeding ground. Nadia, before she disappeared, had called it a door that should never have been opened. They were all right. Some places exist outside our understanding. They don't care about our wars, our borders, our beliefs. They existed before we drew maps, and they'll exist after our civilizations crumble to dust. All they do is wait, and pull, and feed. We lost 12 Marines in that place, 12 names on a wall marked K1A in an ambush that never happened. 12 families told their sons and daughters died serving their country. But they didn't die. Not really. They're still there, sitting in alcoves, breathing, waiting. And one day, when another patrol drives into that blank space on the map, when another convoy follows coordinates they don't understand, those soldiers will have company. I tell myself it's over. I tell myself the well is closed, the structure collapsed, the door sealed. But late at night, when the house is quiet and my wife is asleep, I hear it. Faint, distant. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. Coming from below, coming from everywhere. Coming from a place that has my name carved in stone, waiting for the day I return. 'Cause here's what they don't tell you about places like that. Once you've been inside, once you've breathed their air and heard their whispers, you're marked. Part of you never leaves. Part of you is still sitting in that alcove, hands on your knees, eyes open, waiting with the others. I'm 54 years old now, retired, safe, living a normal life in a normal town. But sometimes I catch myself staring at nothing, hands resting on my knees, breathing but not quite living. And I wonder if I ever really made it out, or if I'm still down there, dreaming I escaped. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering if this story is true. I can't answer that. What I can tell you is this. There are blank spaces on every map, coordinates that don't get missions, regions that patrols avoid without being told why. Stay away from those places. Some doors should never be opened. Some wells should never be uncovered, and some convoys should never have been sent. Operation Red River is still classified. The missing Marines are still listed as combat losses. And somewhere in the Iraqi desert, a town that shouldn't exist still sits on a ridge, waiting for someone else to find it. When they do, I hope they're smarter than we were. I hope they turn around and drive away. But they won't, because that's what the well does. It pulls. It whispers. It promises answers to questions you didn't know you were asking. And once you drive through those gates, once you step into those streets, once you descend into those tunnels, you belong to it. Forever. You're still watching without subscribing? Don't let this story disappear like that convoy. Hit subscribe now. Drop your country and the time you're watching in the comments. Let me know if you've ever felt something watching you from places that shouldn't exist. And if you're in the military, if you get orders to patrol a town that isn't on your maps, turn around. Some missions aren't worth completing.